Imagine sitting down at your kitchen table on a quiet Sunday morning, a cup of coffee in hand, and the sunlight streaming through the window. You glance at your bank statement, expecting the usual list of pension deposits, utility payments, and grocery runs. Instead, you notice an unfamiliar transfer, a few $100s here, 1,000 there, categorized as home repairs or emergency expenses. Your heart sinks. You call the bank only to discover that someone you trust has been quietly siphoning off your funds. This is not a story of strangers on the internet. It's the reality of elder financial abuse, and it's happening to one in every 20 Americans over the age of 65 each year. Elder financial abuse, sometimes called senior scamming or elder fraud, occurs when someone exploits a vulnerable older adult for financial or personal gain. It can take many forms. A caring adult child who asks to handle your banking, but uses your account as their personal ATM. A distant relative who persuades you to sign a power of attorney and then uses that authority to raid your investments. A helper who promises to simplify your life, but quietly redirects your social security checks. In a nation where more than 54 million people are over 65, the impact is staggering. The National Council on Aging estimates that seniors lose over $2.9 billion to financial exploitation every year, and that's only the tip of the iceberg, since many cases go unreported. The heart of the problem is trust. As we age, we naturally lean more on those closest to us for assistance with everyday tasks, paying bills online, managing investment accounts, or even just organizing paperwork. We've raised families, built homes, and poured our savings into our children's education and grandchildren's futures. It feels natural, almost loving, to let a trusted family member take over the less exciting parts of financial management. After all, what could go wrong when it's someone who calls you mom or dad, someone who remembers your birthday and sends you pictures of your grandchildren? But that trust, beast, can be weaponized. Abuse can start with small amounts. $50 here, $100 there, hidden behind the guise of house maintenance or insurance payments. These sums are too small to raise immediate alarm, yet over months or years, they add up to tens of thousands of dollars lost. Worse still, once an abuser secures a legal document like a durable power of attorney POA, they gain the right to manage every aspect of your financial life. Bank accounts, real estate transactions, retirement funds, even medical decisions. A single signature on a seemingly innocuous form can grant them virtually unfettered access, while you remain unaware until it's too late. The ripple effects go beyond dollars and cents. Victims of elder financial abuse often experience profound emotional and psychological harm. Imagine the crushing betrayal of discovering that your child, once your pride and joy, has been draining your savings. The loneliness of realizing that the person you confided in has been lying to your face. The shame that prevents so many seniors from speaking up, even when they suspect something is wrong. Unlike losing money to a stranger, financial exploitation by a loved one carries a heavier burden of guilt and confusion. I should have known, you might think. How could I have been so foolish? This internal dialogue only deepens the wound. Yet talking about money, and especially admitting that someone close to you is misusing it, can feel taboo. We worry about family drama, about rocking the boat. Many older adults fear that reporting abuse will mean losing the very companionship they value. They may depend on their abuser for rides to doctor's appointments, for help with housework, or simply for social interaction. The fear of being left alone can be as powerful as the fear of financial ruin. But staying silent is not the answer. Recognizing the warning signs early can make all the difference between a minor setback and a full-blown crisis. Here are some telltale red flags. Unexplained withdrawals or transfers. Regular bank statements show transactions you don't recall authorizing, especially when labeled as emergency repairs or family support. Changes in legal or financial documents. New names added to your accounts or property deeds. Sudden interest in having you sign power of attorney forms without clear explanation. Isolation from friends and family. The abuser may try to monopolize your time or convince you that other loved ones don't have your best interests at heart. Unpaid bills or sudden financial difficulty. Despite having adequate funds, utilities go unpaid. Mortgage payments are missed or debts accumulate unexpectedly. Personality changes in the caregiver. The individual handling your finances becomes secretive, defensive, or quick to anger when you ask simple questions. Recognizing these signs is the first step, but prevention is even better. Establishing checks and balances can protect your independence and peace of mind. Retain an independent advocate. Engage a trusted friend attorney or certified public accountant, CPA, to periodically review your financial statements. Fresh eyes can spot irregularities you might overlook. Keep accounts separate. Maintain at least one personal bank account that only you can access with minimal linkages to others. Reserve joint accounts for routine expenses and review them together with your advocate. Understand every document before signing. Take your time with legal forms. Ask questions. Consult a third party if you feel uneasy. Never let anyone rush you into signing. Set up alerts. Use your bank's online services to receive email or text notifications for every transaction. Even small alerts can prompt timely investigations. Stay socially connected. Maintain relationships with friends and family beyond your primary caregiver. A robust social network can offer support and make it harder for an abuser to isolate you. It's also vital to recognize that financial abuse often coexists with other forms of elder mistreatment, including emotional neglect and physical exploitation. When one family member is overstepping financial boundaries, they may also be controlling other aspects of your life where you live, whom you see, what you do. By learning to identify financial abuse, you open the door to addressing broader patterns of mistreatment. Most importantly, remember that acknowledging abuse is not a betrayal of family ties. It is an act of self-preservation and dignity. You deserve to live your later years free from fear, free from manipulation, and free to enjoy the fruits of your lifelong labor. Reclaiming control over your finances is not just about money. It's about affirming your right to autonomy and respect. In the coming sections, we'll delve deeper into how these abuses take shape in real-life scenarios, how victims can marshal evidence and legal support to reclaim what's theirs, and how every senior and their loved ones can build strong defenses against those who would exploit trust for personal gain. But first, take a moment to reflect on your own situation. Are your accounts being monitored? Do you have someone you trust to help oversee your financial affairs? If you have any doubts, now is the time to act. When Mary Stevens turned 72, she felt proud of everything she and her late husband had built: a cozy ranch-style home in suburban Atlanta, a modest retirement fund, and a tight-knit circle of friends. Her only child, David, had graduated college debt-free, thanks to Mary's careful planning, and she'd sent him on family vacations every summer. So when David mentioned that he and his wife Lisa were having trouble qualifying for a mortgage on a fixer-upper, Mary didn't hesitate. "Let me transfer the deed into your names," she told him one evening over iced tea on the back porch. "It'll free you up to get that loan." David thanked her with a hug. Lisa kissed Mary's cheek. "You're the best mum," Lisa said. "I promise we'll keep it in the family." At first, everything felt simple and right. The deed transfer went through smoothly. Mary signed a few papers at her attorney's office, barely glancing at the fine print. The lawyer nodded and smiled when she mentioned making things easier for her son and daughter-in-law. Mary felt a twinge of pride at 72. She was still helpful, still relevant. But within 2 months, subtle changes began. Mary noticed that a $200 transfer labeled roof repair showed up on her bank statement. Curious, she called David. He sounded casual. "Oh, that some shingles flew off in the spring storms. We had to patch it up." He promised to reimburse her, and she believed him. Then came a $350 charge listed under septic maintenance. Next, a $150 emergency payment for the air conditioning unit. Mary logged into her account less frequently, trusting David to handle the details. But one night she sat down with her laptop and scrolled through 3 months of transactions. The totals added up to more than $1,700 on a property she no longer legally owned. Alarmed, she opened her mailbox and found a crisp copy of a durable power of attorney form. The heading read, "For your protection, ensure your loved ones can act quickly in an emergency." The notary lines were already filled in with David and Lisa's names. She frowned. She didn't remember signing it. That's when she remembered a quiet afternoon in April. Lisa had stopped by with coffee and pastries. Over warm scones, Lisa explained that she was worried about Mary's health. What if Mary fell and couldn't make decisions quickly? Lisa insisted it was standard practice. "You'd do the same for me, right?" she'd said. Mary had nodded, flattered by the sentiment. A notary had then verified her identity, and Mary walked away with a peace of mind she thought she'd earned. In hindsight, those small payments were the first markers of something much larger. Mary decided to review the legal case of Smith v. Smith, 2019, where a Texas court ruled that a son had exploited his mother's signature on a POA to deplete her savings, forcing her into assisted living. The judge noted how the son had disguised transfers as medical expenses and house maintenance, exactly the pattern Mary saw. She paused, heart pounding. She was living her own version of Smith versus Smith. Instead of confronting David directly, Mary reached out to her friend Harold, a retired CPA who had once helped her with tax returns. Over lemonade on Harold's porch, she showed him her bank statements and the POA form. Harold's eyes narrowed as he pointed out each suspicious line item. "This isn't roofing. These are lifestyle purchases," he said, highlighting transactions going to Lisa's credit card. Harold suggested 3 immediate steps. Freeze the POA contact, the attorney who drafted it, and file a revocation notice. Split the accounts, open a new checking account in Mary's name alone. Transfer half her savings there and close joint access. Document everything. Create a transaction log with dates, descriptions, and copies of statements. Mary followed his advice, even though it felt awkward to call the lawyer again and say, "I think I rushed into that POA." The firm sent back a revocation form and scheduled a brief hearing at the county clerk's office. Next, Mary hired a local private investigator recommended by Harold. The investigator obtained support from the bank official letters granting permission to audit Mary's account. Within 2 weeks, he produced a report, dozens of unauthorized transfers, totaling $18,600 in 6 months. The report listed each payment, its category, and the recipient account. He also uncovered that Lisa had used Mary's name and address to pre-qualify for a home equity line of credit, listing Mary's former house as collateral. Armed with this evidence, Mary met with a new attorney specializing in elder law. The attorney filed an emergency petition with the court to freeze all accounts tied to Mary, suspend the POA permanently, and restrain David and Lisa from entering the property or accessing any funds. Within a week, a judge signed a temporary restraining order. Throughout the process, Mary learned how easily trust can be manipulated when someone uses the language of love and protection. The POA that promised convenience became a weapon. Lisa's concern for Mary's safety was a pretext for control. But Mary also discovered that victims often make avoidable mistakes. Here are the key missteps she recognized: blind signatures, signing legal documents without independent counsel, over-reliance on a single caregiver, granting too much control to one person without oversight, ignoring small red flags, dismissing transactions below $500 as inconsequential. To illustrate, Mary compared her case with another she'd read about in the AARP Bulletin, Thompson versus Thompson 2021, where siblings turned against each other over a mother's retirement fund. In that case, the daughters used powers of attorney to divert $50,000 over 2 years, and the mother only noticed when checks bounced at the pharmacy. She realized that had she set up monthly alerts, she would have spotted the dip sooner. In the weeks that followed, David and Lisa protested in court, but Mary's thorough documentation left little room for doubt. The court ordered Lisa to repay $12,400 immediately and allowed Mary to reclaim her former home deed. David, who had argued he acted out of love, was admonished by the judge for exploiting a vulnerable adult. Yet Mary's victory wasn't just legal. She felt a new sense of empowerment, knowing she could protect herself. She began hosting monthly brunches for friends her age to share what she'd learned: how to read a POA form, how to spot unauthorized transfers, and how to enlist a third party to watch over finances. This case study shows how a generous gift, a house, a POA for safety, can become the foundation of a trap when family members weaponize trust. It's a pattern repeated in hundreds of courtrooms across the country. But it also shows a clear path to recovery: stop, document, and enlist support. As you consider your own situation or that of a loved one, ask yourself, have you ever signed a legal document simply because it was labeled for your convenience? Do you review your bank statements with fresh eyes each month? Is there someone independent? An attorney, accountant, or friend who can spot oddities you might miss? Next, we'll walk through the exact legal and financial steps needed to reclaim control: how to gather airtight evidence, how to work with banks and courts, and how to structure your assets so that trust remains a gift, not a vulnerability. Mary sat at her dining table one crisp autumn morning, sunlight filtering through amber leaves outside. The stack of papers before her felt heavy with Truth Bank statements annotated in red ink. The revoked power of attorney formed the private investigator's 6-page report. Each document was a reminder of how close she had come to losing everything and how resolute she now was to reclaim her life. She began with evidence. The private investigator, Mr. Walters, had taught her the importance of a clear paper trail. Don't just gather documents, he'd said. Organize them so that anyone, even someone who's never seen your case, can follow exactly what happened. Under his guidance, Mary created a single binder divided into sections: account histories, chronological bank, and credit card statements, each transaction highlighted in bright yellow whenever it lacked Mary's authorization. She stapled copies of the online screenshots where David and Lisa's names appeared as authorized users. Power of attorney documents. The original POA form, complete with the notarized signature page, the revocation notice she had filed, and the county clerk's stamped receipt acknowledging the revocation. Property records. The deed transfer that had shifted title to David and Lisa, followed by the court-ordered reversal. She slipped in the cashier's check that repaid them the gift amount, proving the transaction was now null. Private investigators' report. A tidy dossier with detailed descriptions of each unauthorized transfer recipient, account numbers, and a timeline spanning 6 months. Correspondence, printed emails between Mary and her banks. Flagging suspicious charges, letters from the elder law attorney outlining next steps, and the judge's temporary restraining order preventing David or Lisa from accessing Mary's assets. As she assembled the binder, Mary realized how empowering it felt just to handle the paper. Every sheet she taped down, every note she wrote in the margin, was a reclaiming of agency, an assertion that she would not be passive in this fight. With her binder ready, Mary scheduled a meeting with her new elder law attorney, Christine Alvarez, in downtown Atlanta. Christine greeted her with a warm hug and an empathetic nod. "Mary, you've done exactly what we need," she said, reviewing the binder. "Now we'll translate this into legal action." First, they visited the bank where Mary held her primary checking and savings accounts. The relationship manager, Mr. Patel, recognized Mary immediately. Over several cups of strong coffee, Mary and Christine explained the situation. Mr. Patel activated 2 urgent measures that very afternoon. Account freeze all accounts were placed on hold until Mary provided written authorization for each transaction. No checks could clear, no transfers could process, and no new credit lines could be opened in Mary's name without Christine's co-signature. Fraud alerts. The bank placed fraud alerts on Mary's social security number and credit report, ensuring that any attempt to open a credit account would trigger a red flag. As Mr. Patel signed off on the paperwork, Mary felt a measure of relief. She had turned a page from helplessness to action. Next, Christine guided Mary through filing an emergency petition in the Superior Court. Together, they drafted an ex parte motion, a request for immediate relief without waiting for David and Lisa to respond. The motion asked the judge to permanently revoke the previously granted power of attorney, freeze all assets in Mary's name, including bank accounts, investment portfolios, and the former family home, restrict David and Lisa from attempting to access or transfer any of Mary's property with penalties for contempt of court. Despite Mary's initial hesitation, "I don't want to seem vindictive," she'd whispered. Christine reassured her. "You deserve to be safe. This is about fairness, not revenge." Within 48 hours, the judge reviewed their petition and issued a temporary protective order. Christine called Mary that evening. "They can't touch a dime now. You have the court's shield." Mary's shoulders relaxed for the first time in months. But legal protection was only half the battle. Mary also needed financial advice to ensure her assets would remain secure going forward. She reached out to Harold, her retired CPA friend, and together they interviewed 3 certified financial planners recommended by the local senior center. Mary chose Angela Chen, a CFP with experience in elder care portfolios. Angela started by helping Mary separate her accounts into distinct buckets. Essentials fund, a checking account with enough to cover 3 months' living expenses, monitored weekly by Mary and her financial advocate. Long-term savings, a money market account secured under a trust managed by a professional trustee, inaccessible without Mary's direct consent. Emergency reserve, a standalone savings account requiring dual authorization. Mary and Angela to withdraw funds. They set up automated alerts, emails, and texts for any withdrawal over $100, any new payee added, or any address change request. Mary's phone buzzed more often, but now each alert felt like a guardian at the gate, rather than an alarm bell of dread. Angela also recommended updating Mary's estate plan. They replaced the rescinded POA with a springing power of attorney that only took effect under narrowly defined circumstances, specifically if 2 licensed physicians certified Mary's incapacity. The authority was limited strictly to paying property taxes and managing insurance claims, preventing any broad financial control. Mary selected 2 co-agents she trusted, Harold and Angela, neither of whom had a financial stake in her estate. Finally, Angela suggested philanthropic oversight as another layer of protection. Mary had long donated modestly to a local literacy nonprofit. By formalizing her contributions through a donor-advised fund, DAF, Mary could continue her charitable giving without exposing her personal accounts to misuse. The DAF account required Mary's signature, plus one of the nonprofit's board members to disburse funds. It was a small step, but it gave Mary joy knowing her generosity now flowed through a secure channel. At home that evening, Mary placed a framed photograph of her late husband Richard on the mantel. She thought about how they had built their life brick by brick, careful saving and planning always side by side. She whispered, "We did good." Now, with the legal and financial safeguards in place, she felt she was honoring his memory and her own value by protecting what they'd worked so hard to create. Over the next few weeks, Mary's attorney filed the full petition for a permanent injunction against David and Lisa. She provided the court with the binder of evidence expert declarations from Mr. Walters and Angela and a personal affidavit detailing the emotional and financial toll of the abuse. At the hearing, Christine stood by Mary's side as David's lawyer attempted to argue that Mary was overreacting. The judge listened intently as Mary recounted her story, each unauthorized transfer, each manipulated signature, each moment of betrayal. When the gavel fell, the ruling was unequivocal. A permanent injunction. Immediate eviction orders prohibiting David and Lisa from the property and restitution of the $18,600 in misappropriated funds. Driving home from the courthouse, Mary felt a lightness she hadn't known in years. The winding roads seemed to welcome her back to herself. She stopped at her favorite bakery, treating herself to a slice of lemon cake, her late husband's favorite. As she walked to the car, cake box in hand, she realized how far she'd come from the shock of discovering betrayal through the painstaking gathering of evidence to the relief of legal and financial fortification. That night, Mary drafted an email to her monthly brunch group. She laid out the steps she'd taken, how to document suspicious transactions, choose an elder law attorney, set up account safeguards, and update estate planning tools. She closed with a heartfelt note. You are not alone. You deserve security, dignity, and peace of mind. Take these steps, not because you expect the worst, but because you deserve the best. As sleep settled in, Mary felt gratitude not just for the professionals who had helped her, but for the resilience she had discovered within herself. She realized that regaining control was as much a journey of the heart as it was of the courts and banks. Up next, we'll explore the everyday strategies to prevent elder financial abuse. Before it starts, practical checks and balances you can implement immediately, red flags to watch for, and the steps to build a trusted support network around you. Every first Wednesday morning of the month, Mary welcomed her friends into her bright dining room for their money and muffins brunch. The clink of coffee cups mingled with laughter as she laid out blueberry muffins on a lace-trimmed tablecloth. But beneath the cozy veneer, these gatherings had a serious purpose to fortify each woman's financial independence with practical checks and balances. Last week, Mary began pouring fresh ground coffee into delicate porcelain cups. I met with my attorney, my CPA, and my financial planner all in one room. The women leaned forward. I call it my financial three-legged stool. She explained how having three independent overseers, each with different expertise, created a strong support system around her assets. If one leg weakens, the stool doesn't tip over. Her first guest, Harold the CPA, nodded. I look at the numbers, he said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. I review your tax returns, your bank statements, your investment reports. If I see a line item that doesn't match her usual pattern, say a $500 payment to a contractor, when Mary didn't mention any work, I flag it. He showed the group a sample spreadsheet columns for date description amount and a CPA flag checkbox. We meet quarterly, but if Mary sees anything odd, she emails me immediately. Next, Mary introduced Christine Alvarez, her elder law attorney. I'm the legal safety net, Christine said, smiling. I maintain up-to-date copies of your powers of attorney, wills, and trusts. If you ever need to revoke or amend a document, I'm ready to file it that day. She passed around a color-coded folder system, red for urgent, blue for review this year, and green for everything is current. It takes 5 minutes to glance at your folder once a month, and confirm that nothing has changed without your knowledge. Finally, Angela Chen, the certified financial planner, spoke softly but firmly. I help you structure your accounts so that no single person ever has full access, she said. Angela described Mary's three buckets approach: checking savings and emergency reserve each with dual authorization requirements. For example, your emergency reserve account requires both your signature and mine for any withdrawal over $250. That little extra step can stop someone who might try to drain your funds without you knowing. Mary guided her friends through a simple flowchart taped to the refrigerator. Routine review. Mary logs into her accounts every Monday morning. Alert check. Automated email and text alerts notify her of any transaction over $100 or new payee setup. Flag and forward. If anything looks off, she flags it in her transaction log and forwards it to Harold and Angela. Expert follow-up. Within 48 hours, either Harold or Angela replies with all clear or we need to investigate. Legal action if needed. Christine files revocation notices or court motions only when absolutely necessary. This systematic ritual turned what had once been a source of anxiety into a reliable routine. It's like changing the batteries in your smoke detector, Mary told her guests. You don't expect a fire every week, but you do it because it keeps you safe. Between sips of coffee, Mary shared some of the red flags she had learned to recognize. Unexpected urgency. A phone call demanding immediate signing of documents because of a rare federal rule or insurance deadline. Real emergencies rarely come with ticking clocks, disguised as pressure tactics. Overly friendly intermediaries. When someone shows up with donuts or pastries and a notary stamp, take a moment to question why they're turning paperwork into a social event. Too small transfers. A $25 or $50 transfer might not trip your radar, but over time, those nickels and dimes erode your account. Watch for a pattern rather than individual amounts. Account changes without notification. If your statement arrives with a new address of record, new email, or new phone number, that's a sign someone has altered your profile behind your back. Isolation attempts. The person managing your finances suddenly suggests you stop discussing money with anyone else. They may couch it in privacy or simplicity, but it's a tactic to keep others from noticing. As the brunch wound down, Mary handed each friend a laminated elder finance safety checklist she'd created. Review bank statements weekly. Confirm alert notifications work. Meet with CPA and CFP quarterly. Update legal documents with attorney annually. Maintain a trusted contact outside the household. She watched as her friends tucked the checklists into their purses. I feel stronger just having this, one guest said. Beyond routines and checklists, Mary emphasized the importance of ongoing education. Scammers and abusers adapt, she warned. What worked last year may not work today. She encouraged attendance at local webinars hosted by AARP's Fraud Watch Network and the Department of Justice's Office for Victims of Crime trainings. She'd even arranged for Christine to lead a virtual workshop for the Senior Center Power of Attorney Demystified How to Read the Fine Print. Mary also urged her friends to spread awareness within their families. Teach your grandkids about financial consent. She laughed. Tell them, you can't use grandma's credit card, even if your car breaks down. Her guests nodded vigorously. Demystifying money conversations breaks down the taboo, Mary explained. When you talk about it openly, you rob potential abusers of their secrecy. The most poignant moment came when Mary recalled a neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, who had quietly slipped away from his own financial three-legged stool. He let his son handle everything, she said softly, and by the time he realized there were withdrawals, he didn't recognize half of his life savings were gone. Mary's voice trembled. He never spoke up. He was too embarrassed. She leaned forward. Don't be like Mr. Jenkins. By the end of the morning, the women felt both enlightened and empowered. They planned follow-up meetings. One group would workshop sample POA forms, another would practice reviewing mock bank statements, and a third would research local organizations that offered free financial counseling for seniors. As Mary cleared the plates, she smiled to herself. The true value of her ordeal wasn't just the money she'd saved or the property she'd reclaimed. It was the community she had galvanized. They had transformed fear into knowledge, suspicion into vigilance, and isolation into solidarity. Later that day, Mary reviewed her own checklist. Had she met with Harold this week? Had she confirmed automatic alerts? Had she scheduled her annual estate plan review with Christine? Each task she checked off reminded her that protection is not a one-time event, but a continuous journey. That evening, standing by her kitchen window, Mary watched the sunset paint the sky in streaks of rose and gold. She thought of her late husband, Richard, who had always said, "Trust, but verify." In the years since his passing, she'd come to realize how wise those words were. Trust, yes, but build your safeguards. Verify your records and never let anyone exploit your kindness. And with that resolve tucked firmly into her heart, Mary felt ready for whatever tomorrow might bring, secure in the knowledge that she and the many women she had inspired were no longer easy targets, but guardians of their own financial destinies. Up next, we'll explore the emotional recovery journey and rebuilding your life after financial betrayal, with strategies for healing, rebuilding trust, and planning confidently for the years ahead. After the courthouse victory and the safekeeping of her assets, Mary woke one morning feeling an unfamiliar calm in her chest. The nightmare of betrayal by her own child still lingered at the edge of her mind, but it no longer gripped her with panic. She understood now that reclaiming her finances was only half the journey. The other half, perhaps the most important, that was learning to heal, to trust herself again, and to rebuild a life filled with hope rather than fear. Mary began by acknowledging the pain she'd carried. One afternoon she sat on the bench beneath the old oak tree in the park, the same spot where she had whispered to her late husband years before. This time, she wasn't alone. Across from her sat Jenna, a volunteer from the local senior survivors support group. Jenna handed Mary a small journal with a soft leather cover and encouraged her to write. "Give your feelings a home on the page," Jenna said gently. "It helps you see them without being controlled by them." That evening, Mary wrote her first entry. "Today I admitted out loud that I feel both relief and grief. Relief that I'm safe. Grief for the child I thought I knew. I'm frightened that I might never trust my own instincts again." Over the next weeks, Mary wrote daily. Some entries were raw tears spilled onto the paper as she recalled the first time she noticed missing funds. Other entries were sparks of joy, the taste of warm peach cobbler at a 4th of July picnic with friends, the comfort of her cat curled on her lap. As the pages filled, Mary noticed a shift. The journal became a mirror. She could gaze into a space where conflicting emotions, anger, sadness, pride, hope, could coexist without judgment. In parallel, she started meeting with a licensed therapist, Dr. Reynolds, specializing in elder trauma. Their sessions alternated between gentle conversation and guided exercises. Mindful breathing. Simple counts of inhaling and exhaling anchoring Mary in the present. Grounding techniques. Holding an object, often a smooth river stone, to remind her of stability. Cognitive reframing. Turning thoughts like "I was so foolish" into "I did what I could with the knowledge I had." After a month of therapy, Mary realized she was no longer avoiding the parts of her past that hurt. She was facing them with compassion, understanding that vulnerability is not weakness, but a doorway to resilience. Healing also meant re-evaluating the connections in her life. Mary missed family dinners, but she recognized that meaningful bonds require mutual respect. She reached out to her niece, Laura, whom she'd always adored. Over a shared lunch at a sunlit cafe, Mary gently explained, "I want to build a healthy relationship based on honesty. We don't have to pretend everything's perfect, but I hope we can support each other." Laura nodded, tears glistening. "I'm so sorry this happened to you, Aunt Mary. I'll help you any way I can. Bank statements, doctor's appointments, whatever you need." Mary also made the painful decision to limit contact with David and Lisa. She drafted a letter, writing and revising until each word felt true to communicate her boundaries. "I can't continue our relationship under the conditions that existed. When you're ready to engage with honesty and respect, I will welcome you." She mailed the letter and felt both sorrow and relief. In her heart, Mary knew that love without integrity is not love at all. At the same time, she deepened friendships with her Money and Muffins brunch group. They had shared her triumphs and fears. Now they shared laughter and new adventures, a trip to the botanical gardens, a book club that met at one another's homes, and volunteer days at the community food bank. These relationships were built not on obligation, but on genuine care, and Mary cherished every moment. With her finances secure and her heart growing stronger, Mary turned her gaze forward. She met again with Angela, her financial planner, to redesign her long-term goals. Angela asked, "What would make you feel excited about the future?" Mary thought of her late husband's lifelong dream, a cross-country road trip to visit national parks. "Let's make that happen," Angela said, smiling. They drafted a new budget travel fund, a dedicated savings account seeded with $5,000, earmarked for lodging, gas, and park entrance fees, hobby allowance, a modest monthly stipend for art supplies. Mary had always loved watercolor painting, but had set the brushes aside. Legacy Projects funds to support literacy programs at her local library, honoring the volunteer work she and Richard had started decades ago. Angela also helped Mary explore low-risk investments that would keep her portfolio growing just enough to outpace inflation. Together, they set an annual review every May to ensure her asset allocation still matched her evolving needs and risk tolerance. As the months passed, Mary filled sketchbooks with vibrant landscapes. She posted photos of her paintings on social media, surprising herself at how many likes and encouraging comments she received from old friends and distant relatives. The creative outlet not only brought her joy, but also a renewed sense of purpose. Mary realized that her story could help others avoid the same pitfalls. She drafted an article for the local senior newsletter, outlining the 5 phases of recovery: awareness, recognizing warning signs; action, gathering evidence and securing legal help; support, engaging therapists and trusted friends; reconstruction, rebuilding finances and relationships; growth, pursuing passions and helping others. The article concluded with an invitation: if you or someone you know suspects financial abuse, please reach out. You don't have to face this alone. The newsletter ran her piece with a gentle photograph of Mary tending her rose bushes. Thorns and blossoms are like a perfect metaphor for resilience. When the telephone rang later that week, it was the director of the senior centre. They invited Mary to lead a monthly workshop, From Betrayal to Bravery, a roadmap for seniors. Standing in front of an audience, Mary shared her binder of evidence, her journal entries, and her checklist of routines. She spoke candidly about the tears and the triumphs, and when she finished, the room erupted in applause. One crisp spring morning, Mary drove her little sedan onto a winding forest road, the hum of tires mingling with birdsong. Her destination was Yosemite National Park. In the passenger seat lay her journal, filled with reflections of the past year. Entries marked first smile in month's brunch with friends signed up for painting class. Each note was a testament to how far she'd come. As she neared the park entrance, Mary remembered the fear she once felt. fear of being alone, of being powerless. Now she felt the thrill of possibility. She would hike the mist trail, paint Half Dome at dusk, and sleep with the windows open to hear the owls. Above all, she would savor every moment knowing that she had earned the right to claim joy. At the park ranger station, Mary flashed her senior pass with pride. Best decision I ever made, she told the ranger about pursuing this trip. He smiled. Enjoy every step. Later that afternoon, perched on a mossy rock beside a rushing stream, Mary dipped her brush into the watercolor set she'd packed. The paper bloomed with greens and blues. She paused, letting the breeze cool her cheeks, and whispered, "Thank you, Richard, for everything we built, and for the strength you gave me." Then she painted bold strokes, joyful lines creating a scene that captured not just the landscape, but her own journey from vulnerability to victory, from heartbreak to hope. As the sun dipped low, Mary packed her paints and headed toward the lodge. Her heart was full, her spirit unburdened. The road ahead promised new challenges. Of course, life always does, but she knew she was ready. She had reclaimed her power, rebuilt her trust, and opened her heart to fresh adventures. And so, with the stars emerging overhead, Mary drove on confident that this chapter was not an ending, but the beginning of her most beautiful journey yet.